1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on.
I'm talking today to Brian Ringrose. Welcome to the program, Brian.
Nice to be here, thank you.
Brian, whenever I get in amongst a group of musicians and we talk about who's well, who's doing what, and your name keeps popping up. And that's interesting because what do you see Brian as and your career as a musician? Because you aren't the person who stands out the front playing so much, are you?
No, I consider myself probably more to be a session musician, arranger, organiser. I did my first job that I got paid on my 13th birthday, and it was at St David's Church Hall, and I got paid 10 and sixpence. A lot of people won't even know what that is.
10 and sixpence.
Yes, $1.05.
I got 10 shillings on my first gig. I was 15.
Well, there you go. And I've got 2 years to go to be 63, which will mean that I've had 50 years doing it. And I love it as much now as I did then. The difference between now and then is that I've got 47 years experience of all the facets that are involved in the music industry in its broadest sense. You know, it's not just going to a gig on Saturday night and playing for 4 hours. There's the rehearsal, there's the marketing, there's the keeping the group together, there's reading the crowd, there's ascertaining what you should be playing and when, and all those types of things. And I still love it.
You've raised some interesting points. We talk about 50 plus and loving it, and that for me, that's music. The whole of my life from the time as a tiny tot has been celebrating, getting together with people and creating music.
Music's a tremendously social activity, and in the city, I know hundreds and hundreds of people, and there's probably hundreds of people that know me that I know them, but I don't actually know their names. You become a name because you're one person on a stage, or you're 5 people on a stage and there's 200 people in the audience. But not only that, as my career has gone and I've travelled, I've got friends just about in every place you can imagine. Well, I've just come back from doing a weekend in Kaitaia and Kerikeri. We stayed with friends, you know, and you end up actually loving staying with friends as against staying in a motel, because you've met these people and they have supported you for such a long time. And the same happens even in your local area. The people that like you and support you, and suddenly I've got quite a few friends that came along just as fans, I suppose, and then they start talking to you, and then you meet them on the street, and the next thing you've got a lifelong friend, you know, and all they ever did was all they ever had was that they were interested in the music.
Interestingly enough, we have had several sessions on the radio program with people who were just that, fans. And without fans, musicians don't exist.
No, and the good fans like that, they can tell you what you're doing wrong too. They'll tell you you've had a bad night, or why haven't you done such and such, and you think, well, why didn't I think of that? You know, yes. So fans are very valuable.
They are, aren't they? Before we came on air, you gave me a little overview of some of the things that you've done, and I'm absolutely blown away by the extent of the activities that you've taken. Written jingles, children's music workshops, school demonstrating different styles of music, travel, live playing, corporate conferences, the book. Neil Pickard said, don't forget to mention the book. And I hear you're a writer, you have a recording studio. Tell me, how do you find the time?
Oh, well, at the moment I'm having a bit of trouble with that. I'm like most musicians, I'm not a very good organiser of time. I started my musical career on the flute, and I played in Christchurch Youth Orchestra, and I learnt to read, and I did all my grades, and I even started going for my first set of letters. And Elvis Presley came along, and the Beatles, I guess, and as a relaxation sort of thing, I love music. I knew that I loved music, so my sister had a boyfriend who was Spanish, and he played the guitar in a band at the time. Some of the listeners might remember a band called the Rhythm Rockers. I thought that was a great name for a band. Anyway, he showed me how to do the flamenco thing with your right hand, and I could actually do that before I either owned a guitar or knew what any chords were. But anyway, my sister bought me a guitar, and that became sort of like a relaxation in the music world. But as I said, I ended up with a bunch of friends from school, and we played at this little dance and we got paid, and I suddenly thought, I've never been paid for anything I've done on the flute. I carried the flute on till I was about 18 or 19, I guess. But the guitar sort of took over, as it were. So suddenly I became a musician, or I became a guitarist who could actually read. And at that stage, not a lot of guitarists were around who could actually read. And I had quite a broad knowledge of music as such. And I think that carried me through. I went away with Ray Columbus and the Invaders for a while. And then I was a wee bit too young. I had to come back to go to school, believe it or not, which was a bit of a shock. But then I joined another band called Dave Miller and the Birds, and we had a girl, Diane Jacobs, who became Dinah Lee, working with us. And all the bands were all friends with one another, all the bands of that period. And when we went out to Auckland, all the bands in Auckland were all friends. If we weren't playing, you'd go and listen to one of your mates playing, and it was a great fraternity. That was really, really good. When I came back from that, I got in a band that had a residency at the Brevet Club, of all things, and that was in the days when there were lots of balls and what have you. And so we did the ball thing. So you had to do pop music, and you had to do the standards, and you had to do dance music. And those balls, some of the dancers, if your tempo was a smidgen out, they'd give you a rap over the knuckles. Oh, you're playing it too fast, you know. But that was all part of learning about this whole game, you know. And then an opportunity came up, wrong word, on a program called Opportunity Knocks. The guitarist in the band was a guy called Pat Devlin, and he was going back to England. And I got the job as in the band doing this stuff, and that was the start of a 15-year involvement with Television New Zealand, doing all sorts of programs. And the dominant one being That's Country. I did about 67 odd programs on that. And that was like going to university. The demands were horrendous. It was a very, very big program, and you had to learn probably 20-odd songs with different artists up to record level every 3 days. And at the end of the third day, you had to start again and do another one. We did 10 programs at a time. So that was the biggest step forward I took in musical ability. I never smoked. So whenever there was a break, all the guys would go out and have a smoke, and I'd go into the control room and see what the engineer was doing. And I learned a whole lot of skills by observation, and listened to what they were talking about, why they were doing this and so on. So I started a little recording studio at home just to do demos and what have you. And then because of the involvement in That's Country, I got involved with the country music clubs, and there were lots of people that had written songs and wanted to record them. And I thought, well, I've got a little recorder, maybe I could just do some demos for them. And that ended up by actually paying the rent for quite some time. I had all these people coming. I used to charge, I don't know, a few dollars for one track, and they'd come in and do one, and then they wanted to do another one, and it just built. And from there, I got involved with a recording studio, doing some work I did a bit of work with Suzanne Prentice and a couple of other people. And the guy said that had the studio rang me, and he said, "Oh, look, I've got a bit of a deal going on radio jingles. Would you like to come and work with me, and we'll write some radio jingles?" Well, we wrote about 350 jingles, I suppose, over a 2-year period for stations all over New Zealand. They had a bit of a deal going. If you bought X amount of advertising, you got a free jingle, and we were making the jingles. So it wasn't a lot of money per jingle, but because we did so many, that worked pretty well. And again, I learned a lot about writing songs and so on. So that's the sort of background and grounding I had, and I found all these things to do musically during the day, and it wasn't just playing music at night. And then one day a friend asked me if I'd come to the school and talk about the guitar. So I did this little guitar demonstration thing, and then I thought to myself, I'm doing a lot of travelling. I go past dozens of schools in the middle of nowhere. So I started contacting these schools that we went past to see if I could do a demo on the way by and perhaps play for the fuel. And what I didn't realise at that stage was that nobody would go to those schools because they were too far out of the bet blocks, you know, like the Tekapo Primary School or something like that. Nobody wanted to go there because there was only 25 or 30 children. But for me, it was stop for lunch, do a quick guitar demo, pay for another tank of gas and carry on. And that got me involved with children, it got me involved with other people. The person who's on the school committee was also on the skating rink committee. They're having a function. Give Brian a ring, he might be able to come down and play for us, you know, and that's how it sort of built up.
For those of you who've just joined us, you're listening to Brian Ringrose, who I would suggest is one of the true journeymen of music in Christchurch, and we're getting a little bit of a glimpse of the most fascinating journey that he's travelled since. When did you start?
Well, I started learning the flute, I think, when I was 8. Oh, I think it started with a recorder and then went on to the flute quite quickly.
So that's
And-
been a lot of years.
Yeah, all my life,
All
pretty
your
much.
life.
And I've always sort of felt, even though I've had some real jobs, the real jobs actually probably got in the way a bit of the music.
And when did you become what you would call yourself a professional, full-time?
Well, I had a contract with a courier run, and that was during the That's Country period, and I used to have relief drivers, mainly university students. I comment that I probably put more people through university than
the loan scheme.
than the loan scheme has, yeah. And they suggested to me, because I was never in the car, that perhaps I should think about a new career. And so on the 1st of September 1988, I decided I've got a piece of wood and 6 bits of wire, let's see if we can make a living out of that.
And that was a really brave decision, because on this program, week after week, I listened to the musicians saying how they juggled a day job with their music because there wasn't quite enough money to make a living.
What happened with that, I have to tell you, is that it was really hard for the first couple of years, but then some doors started opening. And everybody will say to you, oh, if you do such and such, doors will open for you. And you sort of think, oh, yeah, I know the sort of doors I'd like to open. But I found doors opening that I never ever knew existed. And the 2 examples were the jingle one. I mean, that was just a phone call. Hey, you can do a bit of music and I've got a recording studio. Come on, we'll have a go at writing some jingles. I'd never thought of doing that at that point. And the other one was the school thing that I was just telling you about. You know, the idea of going to a school in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't believe, having done the first one, I think I went to Waimate High School, Waimate Area School, which was from Tiddlers right through, and the whole school came. I think it was about 400 children. And I thought, wow, this is like a rock concert, you know. And they were really enthusiastic about what I did. I mean, I hammed it up a fair bit. I had them laughing, and I was playing to the staff as well, so that they were all involved. Got a couple of people up on stage to give them a go and stuff like that. And I mean, I was really flying by the seat of my pants, but I didn't realise how much I was going to gain from that, not only with fun and a wee bit of remuneration, but the experience of dealing with all these people. It was great.
You do deal with enormous amounts of people now because you've moved into the area of producing music for preschoolers.
Yes, that came about by accident, and I have a business partner who's an educator, and the little glossary over the top of what we're doing is that children who move well learn well, and we use music as a tool to get them to move. So Tessa gives me all sorts of ideas of what she wants to do. You know, we need a song for rolling, or we need a song for skipping, or whatever the case might be. And I sort of use a wee bit of the jingle approach, because they've got to be simple, they've got to be bouncy and catchy, they've got to do something, they've got to be clear in their diction so the messages and that are getting across. And it's worked quite well. We're exporting all over the world, and it's only a home-based business, but I sold nearly 30,000 CDs last year, so it's
well,
doing
that's enormous numbers.
It's doing okay. You don't get any accolades for that because it's not on the pop market or anything, but I bet there's a few rockers out there that would like to sell the volume of stuff that we're selling, and it's all our own material. So we've recorded a few songs of other people, but basically it's all our stuff and it's our programs, and I'm indebted to Tessa for her knowledge, and she's indebted to me for the quality music we produce.
And I'm sure the children are indebted to you for actually responding to the market need, because once again it's being creative as it happens, isn't it?
We do a lot of workshops in the classroom, and it's quite interesting that Tessa and I go into a classroom, 2 people I've never seen before, playing music they've never heard before, but we have them totally involved and they're captivated, and the parents are all sitting around the outside tapping their toes, and I think, oh, this is pretty cool, you know, because a lot of our children's songs are pretty rock and roll, you know, 'cause that's where I come from, so it makes you tap your toes.
Tell us a little bit about the book.
The book?
The book.
The book doesn't exist. The book's a figment of my imagination. Very quickly, I was offered a chance to do a spot at a country music festival, and I had 5 minutes, and I thought, what am I going to do that's going to impress these people? So I decided to create an idol, and because it was country music, I thought I'd spoof a little bit Slim Dusty and the most popular song he did well in the area I was in, being A Pub With No Beer. So I set up a situation. I wanted to sing Pub With No Beer, and I didn't know how to play the guitar. So my sister bought me a guitar, and I got a book. And the book said, learn to play the guitar in 3 days and amaze your friends. So I go through the book, and the book has Spanish guitar, where I do a bit of a flamenco thing. Well, you can't sing Pub With No Beer to that. Then there's classical guitar, so I play a wee classical piece, and you can't sing Pub With No Beer with that. And then there's a bit of jazz, and there's a bit of folk. And of course you can't sing Pub with the Beer with no that. And then I come to the last page, which is a bit of country. And I set up a situation of being able to play rhythm and play lead at the same time, a little bit in the style of Mel Travis or Chet Atkins, along those lines. And because I can do that, and I create the situation of playing the rhythm, then playing the lead, and these are all pages in the book. So finally I can do that. So then I was able to get up and sing Pub with No Beer, which I sing rather badly, and the punchline at the end is I'm going to go off and take some singing lessons. So lots of people have come up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, where can I buy a copy of the book?" But the book doesn't exist.
I wanted to bring that up because Neil Pickard, a friend, had said it had made an impression on lots of people. I really would like to know, what is Brian Ringrose doing now, and what does the future hold?
Well, Brian's pretty involved in the children's thing, obviously, but I still do a lot of live adult playing, and I've moved away a wee bit from the corporate world now for a multitude of reasons. But I've just put a band together with a guy called Peter Sowden, who was the drummer in Max Merritt and the Meteors. Well, Peter's idea was to play some 60s music, and I said, no, let's do better than that. Let's see if we can form a band of guys. All the guys have to be 60. They all have to be playing in the 60s, and they've got to have played right the way through. Not somebody who played in the 60s and put their guitar under the bed for 20 years while they had their family and then decided they'll bring it back out. So we've set up this 5-piece band, which to my way of thinking is the epitome of rock and roll bands, because there's over 400 years experience in the band itself. And what we're doing is we're doing music of the 60s, 70s and 80s. I was quite adamant about that. I wanted to do a wider spread of music. And we're not doing it like it was. We're doing it how we would play it with 400 years experience under our belt. So they're not carbon copies. Some of our singers have been around for as long. We've got Peter Williams, who was with Max as well. We've got Super Cyril, or Cyril Edwards, who has been in Christchurch, an icon as far as I'm concerned in Christchurch entertainment, music business for my entire life. Cyril's never not been there. We've got a couple of other guys who did a period in the 70s basically. Norman Bland's one of them. We've got a couple of girls. Finding a girl from the 60s that's still singing and has sung the whole way through, wanting to do the sort of music we're talking about, has been quite difficult. But we've found a couple of girls who fit the bill absolutely marvellously. So that's very exciting. And that band has been playing at the Richmond Club. We call ourselves Rocking Is Our Business. And it's rocking as in how you and I understand rock and roll. Rock and roll has covered such a wide genre of styles in that. But we are looking pretty much at the basic rock and rolls, but we're doing a bit of disco from the 70s and a bit of the pop music of the 80s as well. And it's a lot of fun, and I'm loving doing that. Plus I do solo work around the town, and I still do the odd corporate job and as it comes along, but I'm just getting a bit more choosy.
Would you like to share with us, if we were thinking of going to listen to your band, say the name again?
The band?
Rocking Is Our Business?
Rocking Is Our Business.
About time?
It's about time. It's about time somebody did some rocking, and it's our business, so that's what it's all about.
And so when
The next one's on the 5th of March at the Richmond Working Men's Club. So
right.
The club's got some tickets if anybody's interested. But, that's what I'm doing, plus the adult thing and the children's thing and my recording studio. And I'm also writing a few songs. I want to do an album of my own, basically to leave from a family. It's probably not going to be something that'll be sold around the world, but I want to have half of it songs that I've written recently with what I know now, and the other half will be about 6 songs that have been my favourites. And to give you a clue as to the sorts of songs I'm talking about, Reet Petite is a song that I have sung ever since Dinah Lee did it, and I love it. Rockin' Robin's another song I love. California Dreaming is a song that I really love doing. So those will sort of be the sort of old ones. It'll all be pretty in your face. And then I've written some old rock and roll songs based on what I know today. And yeah, it's in the pot. I've done 5 songs out of the 12 or so I want to do.
Well, I want to invite you to have it ready for 2007, because we're hoping to have a reunion and a celebration of rock and roll music in Christchurch, 50 years of it. So if you have your record ready, we'll release it and make a big thing of it.
Okay, well, I'll shake your hand on that one. That's a deal. So
That's
we're shaking
deal.
hands here in the studio.
So you've been listening to Brian Ringrose, one of the real journeymen of music of Christchurch over the last 50 years. Thank you for joining with us.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank the listeners for listening. This is a great program. I listen to every one of them.